Welcome to the Unit 20 practical guide. This time we're going to be using Windows Server 2025 and Windows 11 for the client PCs. I've just made a new virtual machine for my server. I'm going to give it 4 GB of RAM. I'm going to give it 2 processor cores. I've selected Server 2025. We've inserted the 2025 disk and we are going to click Start on this virtual machine to start it running. Now our virtual machine has started, it's going to start installing Windows Server. Now we're on the setup screen. We're just going to change time and currency to United Kingdom. Click Next, install Windows Server, agree, and then the installation will begin. At this point it's important we select one with desktop experience. It can be data center or standard. I'm going to choose standard. Then we need to accept the terms and conditions. And then select our disk, hit next. And click install. It will now install Windows Server. The install is now finished and the virtual machine is rebooting. We won't press any key because we don't want to restart the installation from the CD or the ISO image rather. And then once it's finished booting, it will ask us to set up the Windows Server environment. And now it's just going to finish installing Windows Server. It may take some time to install Windows Server 2025. Remember that this is more demanding than previous server installs, and it has a lot to set up, so please be patient with it. Similar to every other Windows Server install, it's going to ask us to make an administrator password. And then once we do that, it will finalize it and it will try and take us to our desktop. So here we get our usual insert Control-Alt-Delete. We just go to input keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete, and now we can input the password that we had just entered to log into our Windows Server desktop. With this being the first time that we're logging in, it may take an extra long time. And you'll see as it's just setting itself up, different dialog boxes will keep opening up until it's fully ready. now that Windows Server is set up, it's going to ask us for some telemetry options. I'm just going to keep it to required only and the limited settings. You'll see that because it's 2025, it wants us to try Azure. I'm just going to close that. We don't need Azure for this setup, and typically in a lab setup like this, we won't be connecting the server to the internet. Give it a second, everything will start to appear as it begins to configure itself. So as of this moment in time, we've installed Windows Server 2025 successfully. For this part of the coursework, we need to set a static IP address, install and configure DNS, install and configure DHCP, install and configure the Active Directory domain services, and also install and configure our help desk page and set up the network shares. All of this must be done before we progress onto working on our client machine on the mock-up system. The first thing I'm going to do is go over here to Devices, Network and Network Settings, so that the server will be able to communicate with the other client VMs on the internal network. We need to change our network adapter from NAT to internal network. My company for my coursework is called Blue Day, so I'm going to give mine a name of blueday.local, and I'm going to say allow VMs on promiscuous mode. Click OK, and it will save those settings. It's now connected to an internal network. You'll see the network indicator here says connecting to Ethernet, as it's trying to identify the new network. For the first part of setting a static IP address, I'm going to close out a server manager. I'm going to go down here to my network settings. And then I'm going to click the settings icon. Once the settings load, we can go to network and internet. Then we can go to advanced network settings. Then we're just going to click on this drop down to our Ethernet adapter, click more adapter options, click the edit button, and we'll get a familiar prompt here. I'm going to disable IPv6 and double click on IPv4. We're going to use the following settings for the lab network: an IP address for the server of 10.0.0.1, a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, the default gateway being the same as the server, as this will be our router, and our DNS also being our server, as it will be our router. Click validate settings upon exit and click OK. That's now loaded, and we can click OK, and this will now apply to our Ethernet adapter. You'll see again, it says here no internet access. It says an error occurred whilst troubleshooting, but that's okay, we can click close as long as those settings are correct. Close out of that. Just going back into the network adapter, it will actually be better because it's pointing to itself for us to put 127.0.0.1, as this means localhost and it will look to itself rather than going out onto the network just to be pointed back at the server itself. So I would change your DNS to 127.0.0.1, meaning localhost. With this, we have now installed Windows Server 2025 and set a static IP address on the server. Next, we need to install and configure the DNS service or the domain name resolution service. To do this, in our server manager, we will go to Manage, add rules and features, click Next, rule-based, click Next, select our current server, hit Next again, and then give it a second just to validate. It's worth noting that this validation process could take a couple of minutes, so again, please be patient with this install of Windows Server. So now that we've selected role-based, we're going to select this server here. You can see our pre-configured IP address of 10.0.0.1. Hit Next. And then I'm going to install, for now, just the DHCP server and the DNS server. DNS is what will act like a router, and it will allow us to convert domain names into IP addresses, so the DNS server will help the clients find when it's looking for my company name, for instance, bluedeer.local. It will say, okay, this resides at the Active Directory domain controller, which is at 10.0.0.1. And a DHCP server will hand out IP addresses to every other machine on the network. So these two together basically make the server into a router. We'll click next, next, next. Confirm, so DNS and DHCP. We'll restart it if it's required and hit install, and now we'll just wait patiently and allow this to install. Again, this may take some time, so just be patient with it. Especially with it being Server 2025, the resource usage is much higher on any machine running as a VM. Now that that's finished, I'm not going to configure it straight away, but I'm going to just take care of a few housekeeping items. To make it more usable, I'm just going to insert the guest edition CD image. You can do the equivalent of this if you're using VMware Workstation. Then I'm going to navigate to the File Explorer. And then find my disk here. And then I'm going to run the application to install it. And at the same time, I'm going to rename this PC. I'll hit next on the installer and leave that in the background. Up here, I'm going to click rename. And then we're going to name it something standard. I'm going to call mine bluedeer-DCO1. It is the main controller 1, or it will be. And it says it requires a restart. We'll restart later. In fact, we'll restart after the VirtualBox Guest Editions has been done. And then when we come back, it should fill our screen and it'll be easier to get on with the configuration. And now that it's finished, it gives us an option. We'll reboot now. And I'm just going to remove the disk from the virtual drive so it doesn't ask us if we want to boot from a CD. It's now stopping its services and then it'll reboot. At this point, it's worth noting on our priorities checklist, we've installed Windows Server, set the static IP address, installed and configured the DNS service and the DHCP service, so we can check those off. We've also renamed the server and installed VirtualBox Guest Editions. Windows Server is now rebooting, so it'll get ready to sign in any second now. Now that it's loaded, we can put Control-Alt-Delete in, and then sign into our administrator account again. You'll notice straight away it won't scale to the right resolution. However, sometimes if you force it to scale a few times, it will automatically come up. And there we go, it's now scaled to the correct resolution. We'll just give Server Manager a minute here while it's collecting its inventory. You'll see that if we try to do anything, it'll just tell us Server Manager is collecting inventory data. It'll be available after that. So we'll just wait until DNS and DHCP show up here, and then we'll get ready to configure that. While that's being set up, I'm going to go to Devices, Shared Folders, and I'm going to share a folder from my desktop PC that has all the important software in it. So you'll see here Unit 20 software in my Documents folder. I've already added that. To add it, you just click here. It says auto mount. Yes, it's important. It says auto mount, or it might not show up straight away. And then I'm just going to verify that's in here. Go to this PC, and it should show up as a network shared drive, and it is indeed there. Inside here I have most things that I'll need. I've got Office, OS Ticket, some Windows installation, XAMPP, which we'll use for hosting our help desk. So we can just close that for now. Now that it's loaded, we can go to Tools and then locate DNS. We can now configure the DNS service for our server. We'll double click on our server name, and then we're going to first go to the reverse lookup zones. We're going to right click and add a new zone. Going to click next, choose primary zone, IPv4, and then the network ID will be the first 3 numbers of our IP address. So 10.0.0, click next, it'll automatically come up with the file name, hit next, accept the default for dynamic updates and hit finish, and now that's been made. Now we need to make a new forward lookup zone. Again, we're going to select primary zone, and we're going to give this zone a name of blueday.local, which will later become our domain name. We'll create a new file, we'll accept the default for dynamic updates, and then click finish. In this forward lookup zone, we'll create a new host A or quad A record. We'll give it the name that we gave the PC, so blueday-gco1.blueday.local. Give it an IP address of 10.0.0.1. We'll create an associated pointer record and add this host, and it's been added successfully. The reason we do this is that later when we come to join a domain, this DNS server will tell the client PC this is the IP address where you can find this server. Active Directory will of course say this is the server that you need to speak to in order to join the domain. Once you've done that, you can close out of the DNS manager and go back to Server Manager. Now we need to go and configure DHCP. First of all, see the flag has a warning and it says configuration required for DHCP server. So once we go into that, we'll hit commit and then close, and that's done. Now we can go to Tools, just like we did for DNS, but go to DHCP this time so that we can configure it. We need to tell the server what IP addresses it can hand out. So inside the server, if you go to IPv4, right click and make a new scope. Hit next. We'll give it a name, so I'm going to give mine Blueday Office PCs. And then I'm going to hit next. I'm going to start my IP address range at 10.0.0.50 and end it at 10.0.0.150. That gives me a roughly 100 addresses that it will dynamically give out. The subnet mask should be the same as we made on our server network adapter, so 255.255.255. Hit next. We don't need to add any exclusions or delays, especially not for a mockup system. We'll leave the leash duration at the default 8 days, and yes, we want to configure these options now. The router, as I mentioned before, will be this server, so it'll be 10.0.0.1. Add that, hit next, and then in the parent domain we can say blueday.local, and then we've got our server here, so hit next. We don't have a Win server, so we can just skip that one, and yes, we want to activate that scope now. Hit finish. And then you'll see here IPv4 is green with a tick, it says active, so we can close out of the DHCP manager. While we're here, the next thing we're going to do is install the web server. We're going to be using XAMPP, although you can use Internet Information Services available from the Add Rules and Features. It is just a lot more complicated for this practical, and XAMPP makes it really easy and quick to set up. So I'll go to my shared folder, double click the XAMPP installer, we'll hit run, and then again this could take some time, so we'll just leave it to process itself once we've selected the default options. You might get this UAC warning, that's okay, just skip past that. hit next. I'm only going to be installing Apache and MySQL, that's all I need. We want phpMyAdmin. Everything else I can untick. We'll install at the default directory. Next. And now it will begin to install. So once XAMPP had completed, I unticked it because I don't want it to start. Just as a recap, I went and got my OS ticket software from my main PC. Once you've got that, you need to extract it twice. Go into the upload folder, Control and A to copy everything, go to this PC, your C drive, go to XAMPP, and then you need to go into the htdocs folder here, and then paste everything we've just copied in. I'll now wait for that to finish. Once it's copied, we just need to provide the sample configuration, so go to the include folder, then scroll to the bottom, you'll find one called ost-sample config. We're going to rename that just to remove sample, so it just says ost-config, and then we can close that. We can now go to XAMPP, open the control panel, then down here in the bottom right we can open the control panel from here. Let's click start on Apache and MySQL. Then once they're both green and running, we can go to Microsoft Edge. Remember that you'll have to set up Edge if this is the first time you've launched it. I'm just going to continue without sharing data, just to get started quicker. And then you're going to want to navigate to localhost/phpMyAdmin, which is where you can manage your MySQL database. Once that loads, I'm going to go to user accounts. And I'm going to click on the add user account option. Username, I'm just going to put this as OS ticket. Leave hostname as a wildcard. Put in a password. And then here, we're just going to check all. We wouldn't usually do this in a production system because of security, however, for the purposes of a mock-up system, it's okay. So there we go, you have added a new user. Now we need to make a new database for OS Ticket. We'll give it the name OS Ticket, create. We'll leave the default database type there. There we go, the database has been created. So now we can leave this and just go to localhost without phpMyAdmin. And here you'll see the OS Ticket installer. We'll click continue. We'll give our help desk a name. I'm going to call mine the Blue Day Help Desk. And then I'm just going to give it a default email. Remember that this won't actually work because you're not connected to the internet. I'm going to make my administration account. And then I'm going to give it the MySQL host name, so it's localhost. The database is called OS Ticket. The username we just made is OS Ticket. And then the password is the same password that I've used for everything in this install. Again, something that you wouldn't do in a real world setup, but for a mock-up system, that's okay. Click install now, and then it'll begin to configure OS Ticket ready for your system. This process may take a while, so again, be patient with it. Once it's done, the web page will refresh as it's just done. And it'll say, congratulations, your OS Ticket has been completed successfully. I'm then going to do my local OS Ticket URL, open that in a new tab, open the staff control panel in a new tab. Then I'm just going to save bookmarks to this on my bookmarks bar, and then to the agent login page as well. I'm going to try logging into the agent panel. Just to make sure that this works. And here you can see that it has worked. So here I can go into settings and look at agents and make templates for them. And then I can click on users. Again, make templates for them. If I go to manage up here, you'll see that there's help topics where we can add help topics and add instructions for people that might face recurring issues. If we click on the agents tab, this is where we'll be able to add agents. So I can add a new agent here, do test and just do test. And then we can say if they're an administrator or not and create that account. And there you see, after a while it says successfully added test. And now if I click on agents again, I'll be able to see both myself and the test account. Now, note this at the top, please take a minute to delete the setup directory. So all we need to do is go back into that XAMPP folder that we made. So this PC, C drive, XAMPP, htdocs, and then the setup folder, you can either rename it or delete it. So I'm just going to choose to rename it to setup_done. Now if we refresh the page, that error is now gone and it's in place of something else. We don't need to change the OST config files right now. Again, this isn't a real world setup. In a real world setup we would, but for this instance we won't. Before I move on, I'm also going to set up the firewall to allow my other virtual machines to access this internally hosted web page. XAMPP is meant for development and only hosting on the local host. But if I go to my firewall, inbound rules, and then create a new rule, that will allow a client to establish a connection with the program we'll select, and then we'll select XAMPP. We'll actually select the HTTPD Apache server, so go to XAMPP, Apache, and then we're just going to search for HTTPD, and then this is what actually hosts the website. We'll click next. We'll allow the connection on all of them, and then we'll say help desk website. Give it a meaningful name so that we can find it in this long list, and there you can see it's confirmed at the top. Now I'm just going to close out of this and stop XAMPP running for the time being, and close that. Next up, we're going to set up Active Directory domain services. You'll see that configuring ADDC is the next one on our list. We've already just done number 6, so we can cross that one off. Like the other rules and features, we can go to Manage at the top, Add Rules and Features, then we can click Next, Next for rule-based to select our current server, and then we want Active Directory domain services. We'll add all the features, click Next, Next again, Next, and then we'll restart the destination server if required and hit Install. Again, this will take some time to install and configure itself. Okay, now it's finished. It says configuration required, installation succeeded, so we'll click close. And then we're going to click the flag again and click promote this server to a domain controller. Give this a second again to load. It may take a few minutes. And when it does, all these grayed out options will become available as it just has. We're going to click add a new forest. We're going to set the root domain name to the company that you're doing, and then add .local onto the end of that, just like we did for DNS before. Click Next. We will leave the forest functional level and domain functional level as they're set. We'll also leave these settings to the default because we don't want it to be a read-only domain controller. And then it wants a directory services restore mode password. I recommend, again, using the same password for everything in this mockup system. This is something you could talk about in optimizations, is improving security by having targeted passwords for each different service. Again, just give it a few minutes while it configures, and then these options will become available to you. So I'm going to put in my password twice now that that's loaded. Make sure that you remember these passwords, obviously. A delegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found, it says. This is fine because it's an internal network, so you can safely click Next. Then the NetBIOS name should automatically fill itself out once it's loaded. There you go, you see it's already put Blue Deer in there. Next it'll give you 3 paths, and we're okay, we're happy with the default, so we'll click Next. We'll just review our selections, they look okay, so we'll hit Next. And it'll now run a prerequisite check to make sure the server's not got any conflicting installs or configurations to this. You'll see now it's loaded, prerequisites check completed, all passed successfully, so we'll click Install. And it'll now configure the Active Directory domain computer. Again, this could take some time, so just be patient while it goes through this process. And then we know it's finished because it says your computer is being restarted. We'll just click close on that and on that. Close the server manager and then just wait, your server will restart itself. Once the server is rebooted, just go ahead and sign into it as you usually would, but you'll notice this time it says bluedeer/administrator instead of just administrator, because this means we're signing into the domain administrator account rather than the local host administrator account. It may take a minute to set up the desktop for this user. Now that our server's booted up, we're going to go to Tools, and then we're going to look for Active Directory users and computers and launch that. then inside bluedeer.local, we're going to right click it and create a new organizational unit. This is how we group things together in AD. I'm going to create 3 separate ones, one for junior staff, create a new one for managers, and then create a final new one for directors. This is all within the client brief or specification from Pearson, by the way. Inside each of them, I'm going to make a new user. I'm just going to call mine the type of user and then test, and then I'm going to implement a first initial last name username. Again, for the mockup system, I'm going to use the same password as I have for everything and just tick password never expires. Hit next and finish. And then I'm going to replicate this across the other OUs. So new user, manager, test, mtest, next, same password, and then password never expires. Hit next and finish. And then finally directors. And that's great. We've made 3 OUs with 3 users, but we need to make security groups so that we can apply group policies to them. To do this, I'm going to go through each OU, hit new, and then select group. Make sure it's global and it's a security group. I'm going to call this grp_junior, hit OK, double click that and go to members, and then we're just going to add junior test that we made. Hit apply and OK, and again repeat this for each of the OUs. So new group, group, managers, security, double click that, members, and then I'm going to add my mtest account, and then directors, new group, group, directors, and then add my director test account. Hit apply and OK. And now we've set up 3 OUs for the staff, we've made 1 test account per OU, and we've made the security group for them. One thing I'm quickly going to do is just check on my DHCP service. This is because after we set up ADDS, sometimes it deauthorizes it. So if we go to Tools and DHCP, this would just give us an error when we come to set up our clients in them not receiving an IP address. Expand the server and you can see this little red icon here. It means it's not authorized, so we'll right click the server, click authorize, and then we're just going to refresh our view, and there you go, you can see IPv4 now has a green tick. Go to scope, just make sure it's activated, it is, and then we can save some troubleshooting later. So at this point in setting up the server, we've now installed and configured the Active Directory domain controller service, and left is for us to create and set up our network shares. To do this, we're going to go to File Explorer, this PC, and then we're going to go to the local disk C, and I'm just going to make a new folder and call it shares for now. Inside the coursework, we've been asked to make 3 separate shares, one called general, one called policies and procedures, and then another one called management. I'm also going to make a third one called MISC, and this is where I'm going to put everything like my wallpaper, anything that I need to apply via the group policy, like installing Microsoft Office. The first thing that we're going to sort out is the NTFS permissions. We'll start with the general folder, right click it, show more options, and just go to properties, go to the security tab, and then click advanced on the bottom. We're going to click Disable Inheritance, and then we're going to convert inherited permissions. Then we're going to remove everything apart from system and domain administrators. And now we're going to add those 3 security groups that we made before. So group, junior, there you go, you can see it's found that. And we're going to add this with full control. Click OK. Then we're going to add select principal, group, directors with full control. Hit OK. And then finally we're going to add group managers with full control and hit OK. We'll apply these permissions and press OK again. And now we can move on to the policies and procedures. Right click again, properties, security, advanced, disable inheritance, convert, and then remove everyone except for the system and the administrator. This time we're going to add group directors. And we're going to add them with full control. And this time we're going to add group junior. And this time we're only going to give them limited permissions. So we will give them read and execute only. So the ones that are already selected, hit OK. And then we're going to do the same for managers. Hit OK. Apply and OK. And now click OK. And then finally management again. Security, advanced, disable inheritance, remove everyone except system and administrator, and then we want to be adding the directors, and we want to add them with full control, and then we want to add the managers with read and execute again. And the junior staff shouldn't have any access to this, so we're not going to add them with any permissions. We'll hit OK. The MISC, I'm just going to hit security, advanced, and just make sure that all Blue Day users can read and execute. They shouldn't be able to write to it, so that's correct. Hit OK. And next we need to start setting up the shares. So we're going to go to right click, properties, sharing, advanced sharing, click share this folder, it's called general, permissions, and then we need to once again add these different people, so group directors, group managers, and group junior. So remember, everyone can have full control. We basically have to set the same permissions again here. Hit apply and OK. Apply and OK. You'll see we get the network path there. And then just repeat this again for your other folders. This time only directors want to have full control over this folder. Hit apply and OK. Then management, sharing advanced, share the folder, permissions. Remember this time we're not adding the junior staff, just the managers and directors, and only the directors should have full control over this. Hit apply, OK, close that. And now I'm going to share my MISC folder. Permissions, everyone can read, and that's OK. Hit apply, OK. And we have now set up our shared folders. Once you've done that, we can close out of that, and we now need to set up the ability to automatically map these shared folders to our client PCs. So going back into Server Manager, we'll go to Tools, and then we're going to look for Group Policy Management, which is about halfway down the list. Open that up. And we'll get this where we can see our domain forest. Double click that, go into the domains folder and blueday.local. We'll be able to see all of the OUs that we just created then. As we want this policy to apply to all the users for now, we'll right click the actual domain, create a group policy object in this domain and link it here. We'll call it map network drives. Click OK. And then we will click onto that. I'm just going to click don't show this message again. Make sure security filtering says authenticated users. And then go to settings. Click close on that. And then I'm just going to right click on user configuration and click edit, which will bring up the editor. So here we go. We want to navigate to user configuration, preferences, Windows settings, drive maps, and then we'll get this screen here. We're going to right click new map drive. I'm going to put the location as blueday-dco1/general. And then we're going to use drive letter G for this. Common, we're going to click item level targeting, target, and then we're going to add our organizational units. So here we've got junior staff. Then we're going to add another organizational unit and another one. And then we want to add directors and managers. Now this is using Boolean logic and it's saying if they're in junior and management and directors, that will never be the case. So click on ones that say and change these item options to or. And we click OK. Click apply. And OK. Now we're going to repeat this for our next map drives. So here we want to do Blueday. Remember the name of our PC, DCO1/policies and procedures. We're going to use drive letter P for this one. Item level targeting. And again, we're going to add all 3 organizational units. Change the item options to or. Then just add these 3. The item level targeting means that when we come to add our management folder, we can leave out the junior group and then they won't accidentally try and access a drive that they don't have permission for. So the final drive will be my Blueday DCO1/management. And then we'll use drive letter M for management. Hit common, item level targeting. And this time we're only going to add the management and the directors. And again, don't forget to change your item options to or instead of and. Hit apply and OK. And there we go, we have our 3 drive maps set up there. I'm just quickly going to go into my shared folder, get this wallpaper from my main PC and copy that. I'm going to copy that into my shares and that MISC folder I spoke about before and hit paste. I'm going to close out this editor and then I'm going to make a new GPO in this domain and I'm just going to call it default desktop configuration. Hit OK. And then I'm going to edit these settings again. This time I'm going to go to user configuration. Then I'm going to go to policies and then I'm going to go to administrative templates. And then there'll be an option for desktop. Then inside desktop there'll be another one for desktop. And then we have this option for desktop wallpaper. Double click that, hit enabled. And then we're going to give it the share name. So remember, it's our server name. So for me it's BlueDeerDCO1 / I called my share MISC, and then my wallpaper is called wallpaper.jpg. I'm just going to set the style to fill, hit apply and OK. And now I can close this group policy management editor. We'll come back later to setting up our shortcuts. Next I'm going to set up Windows Backup, so close our group policy management console, go into Server Manager, hit Manage, add rules and features, and this time we're going to skip the server rules page and go straight into the features page. We're going to scroll to the bottom and find Windows Server Backup, hit Next and install. Remember, it is a client requirement that the server has a backup. You'll now see that the installation succeeded. We'll hit close and then just check our flag, hit tools, and then we can find Windows Server Backup at the very bottom. Just minimize the Server Manager for now and it will launch the Server Backup console. We'll click on Local Backup and then just give it a second. It's going to have to load everything in from the server as it says reading data. When it's available it will fill this in. Now that it's loaded, we'll now get the option if we right click to do a backup schedule. Click Next. We'll say I want to choose custom. Then I'm going to add in my local disk C the shares folder, which is where all our data is going. Click Next and we'll say once a day at 11 PM at night. Then what we'll do is it's a bit redundant because it will be on the same server, but we'll do backup to a shared network folder. This way you could do it to a different server, but we're just going to do this to the shares folder again. And then you'll see if we put / it gives us the options. We'll do it in that MISC folder we talked about before. Hit Next. And then it'll ask us to log in. You might need to go to the folder and just tweak the permissions slightly. So if I go to Properties, Sharing, Advanced, Permissions, then if I just add Administrator, hit OK, and then just allow full control, hit Apply, Apply again, and close. This time it should let me add that folder. There we go, and hit Finish. It'll create the backup schedule, and once it's done this, wizard will close. You can see that this is finished and it says your first scheduled backup will happen at 2300 hours. We'll click close on that, hit close again, and go back to our server manager for now. Now in my folder we have a copy of Office 2010 here. This one has an MSI installer, so it's better for GPO deployment. You might have issues with other versions of Office like the click to run ones. This ISO has been extracted, so I'm just going to copy this, place that in my C drive in that MISC folder. So a drive that's not mapped but everyone does have permission to read from. Just paste that and give it a minute to copy over. Next, because we want Office to install automatically without having to have a user signed in, we're going to go to Shares MISC, and then we're just going to update the shared permissions so that domain computers can also read from it. Hit apply, apply again, and I'm just going to update the security by adding domain computers that they can read and execute. OK, apply that and hit OK and close that again. I'm going to go to the MISC folder, Office 2010, and then right click. I'm going to open a PowerShell window here. When the PowerShell window opens, I'm just going to click here and click command prompt. I'm going to change directory to the parent one, and again, then I'm going to cd into my shares folder, my MISC folder, and then the Office 2010 folder. You'll notice, by the way, this is running as an administrator, and it has to be. I'm then going to call the setup executable with the flag admin. Then you'll notice that Office customization tool will load any minute now. And here it is loading in the background. So we'll select Microsoft Office Professional Plus 2010 32-bit. We'll just keep current settings, click OK. For install location and organization name, we'll just set up Blue Deer Company, and then we'll go to licensing and user interface. We'll just use KMS client key. We'll accept the terms in the license agreement, and then we'll change display level to none, and then suppress mode will also make sure it's ticked. Then we'll go to feature installation states. Then here we'll expand it, and we'll just remove anything that we don't want to include. So we don't want SharePoint, we don't want OneNote. It specifically wants Word, Excel and PowerPoint, so they're some of the only things I'm going to leave installed. And then for these ones, we'll click Run from my computer. Same for PowerPoint and same for Word. And then we'll click File, Save As, and we'll save it as bluedeer.mst, MSP, sorry. And we'll just save that in that shared folder. And you'll see it's creating the MSP file. Close out of that, we'll quit, close our terminal, and now we can set up the group policy to deploy this. So we'll go to Tools, find our group policy management, and then we'll right click the domain, make a new GPO, we'll say deploy Office 2010. And then we'll go to settings again, and we'll edit this configuration. This time we'll go into our computer configuration, the policies, software settings, and then software installation. We'll right click, and then we'll click new and package. This time it's important that in here we'd use the network share, so we'll do bluedeer-dco1 /misc /office 2010 /pro+.ww, and then in here you'll see we've got our MSI installers. We're going to select pro+ww.msi, open that, and then because we created that MSP file, we'll click advanced, hit OK. Give it a second just to load that in. And there you go, this dialog box will pop up. We're going to click modifications. And then we're going to click add. Then we're just going to go back to our 2010 folder. And then, sorry, because this is 2010, it opens an MSP package instead, so we're just going to do new package again, cancel out of that. Select Pro Plus and we'll click assign this time. Newer versions make an MST file instead of MSP. MSP we have to handle slightly differently, so we'll just wait for our package to show up here. While that's doing that, we'll go to our shares folder. There we go. And then this MSP that we made, we're going to cut that and just paste it in this update folder. When it's installing on the computers, it will automatically scan this updates folder. You can see that Office Professional Plus 2010 is now on our install list. And now we can close the group policy editor and also just refresh this to make sure it's on there. Here we go, Microsoft Office Professional Plus 2010, install, perfect. Then we can close that. And close this. The next part we're going to go to is setting up one of our client VMs to test everything that we've made so far. To do that, I'm just going to minimize my server. I'm going to make a new virtual machine. I'm going to call this Blueday-PC01. Going to select an ISO image, and I'm going to select Windows 11 here. I'm not going to proceed with unattended installation because we need the Pro version, so we'll click Finish, and then we'll start up our Windows 11 virtual machine. And then the install process will be roughly similar to how we installed Windows Server. You'll see here it's now opened and it'll begin to boot from the ISO image that we selected. Since as we do want to boot to the installer, you'll press any key when it asks. Bear in mind, this Windows 11, because of the TPM 2.0 requirements, it does take a bit longer in the virtualization software to start. Once it's booted, it'll look like the regular Windows 11 installer. So we'll select United Kingdom, hit Next. Next again, we'll install Windows 11. We'll agree. And then we'll just click I don't have a product key. This is for a lab practical that'll last a few days, so it's not worth burning a product key on this. And then it'll just go through some prerequisite checks as it loads. Here's where it's important. We'll select Windows 11 Pro. Next. And just because I didn't configure enough virtual memory, I'm just going to go into the settings of this and just change it to 4096 megabytes and just start again. Now that we've got it set to 4 gigs of RAM, we'll retry with the installation process. So again, we'll choose United Kingdom. We'll agree that everything will be deleted. Select that I don't have a product key. And now I'll run those prerequisite checks again. Here we'll select Windows 11 Pro, not any of the other versions. We'll accept the terms and conditions. Here we'll select the disk, click Next. And then we'll click Install. We'll now leave it and give it some time to install Windows 11 to the virtual hard disk. It's now completed copying all the files to the virtual hard disk, and as it says, it will restart the PC in a few moments. When it does, it will ask if we want to start from the CD or DVD drive. Do not press any key because we don't want to have to copy all these files again. To mitigate this, as it begins to restart, I'm going to go to my optical drives and remove the disk so that it doesn't boot from there again. I just check, yes, it's removed it. It should now boot to the internal virtual hard drive. And now that it's booted, you'll see the installing screen. So now that it's finished installing, it will shortly boot up into a screen where we can begin to set it up. Just remember to configure your network settings on this to be identical to the server. So that means it needs an internal network adapter, not NAT and not a host only one, but internal. The name of the network should be the same as your server. For me, I set that to bluedeer.local. So you see here, internal network, bluedeer.local, and we'll just hit OK on that. If Windows 11 detects an internet connection, then it will want you to sign in with a Microsoft account. And you can see now that it's loaded, it's bringing us to the introduction. Again, it may take a few minutes to load this page. So we'll set it up as United Kingdom. We'll also select the keyboard layout to be the same. We'll skip adding a second keyboard. For this, since as Windows 11 won't want us to skip it, we're just going to go to see our soft keyboard here, which comes up here, and we're just going to hit Shift and F10, which will bring up the command prompt. And then we're going to say OOBE, which is the out-of-box experience, and BYPASNRO, which is for bypassing it. Your Windows 10 system will now restart. And then it will return to the out-of-box experience that we were just on. This time, you'll see we have the option for I don't have internet, and then it will ask us basically, are we sure? Now we can enter our name, so we're going to call this account admin, and then give it the same password that we've used for everything else in this practical. Confirm our password. And then we're just going to put a default answer for all of our security questions, as we won't really need these. Next, it's going to bring up our privacy settings. I'm going to hit no on all of these just to disable as much telemetry as possible. And then we'll be asked to accept some of the terms in a second. Windows will now configure itself and take us to the desktop once it's ready. Like it says on the screen, this may take a few minutes, it could even take 10, so just be patient with it, especially if you're on a lower powered desktop doing these virtual machines. Now would be a good idea to turn on your server though, because remember this is a DHCP server, and without it our client PC will not pick up an IP address. You'll now see that the client VM has booted up into the Windows 11 desktop. Give it a few minutes just to get itself sorted, it may take a long time. You'll see it's attempting to connect to the Ethernet connection. Now's a good time to open up your command prompt, so just search by typing CMD. So opening from the terminal, just hit command prompt, and then we're just going to wait for that to load. So we're just going to do ipconfig/all to get all the parameters. Remember the internet adapter was blueday.local, so it's already picked that up. And you'll see here it's successfully pulled an IPv4 address from the server. So the first thing I'm going to do again to make this easier to use is insert this guest edition CD image. Go to my file explorer and then navigate to my CD drive, which will allow me to install it. So you can see the guest editions in my CD drive. And then it's this VBox Windows editions we want to install, just like we did on the server edition. Whilst it's doing that, I also want to go into my settings and rename this PC. So up here we'll click rename in the settings. And then I'm going to name it blueday-PC101. And then it will tell me that the PC needs to restart for this to take effect. I'm not going to restart it now though. So I'll leave that in the background and you'll see that the VirtualBox installer is beginning. And only after that's completed will we do the restart. So just like we did on the server, we'll accept all the defaults and that will install to the C drive now. This will allow for just small performance boosts and also us to use the full resolution of our screen to make it easier. You might see the screen flicker a few times just whilst it configures it. Again, this may take a few minutes, so just be patient with it. And now it's finished, we'll click reboot now, and then your virtual machine will reboot. So now it's starting back up from the reboot, and then it'll ask us to log in. And now that we've verified the IP address is working from the server, we can move on to connecting it properly to the server. Now that it's loaded, we'll go to the Windows settings. We'll go to the System submenu, and then we'll go to About. You'll see that the VirtualBox driver is now loading, so our screen resolution will change. There we go. And now here we can see under device specs we can go to domain or workgroup. And it'll bring up a prompt just like the old versions of Windows. We need to click change on the bottom. Look for a domain and type in blueday.local. And the error is saying that our server is missing the records. This is quite a common issue when we're setting up Active Directory. It doesn't make the DNS records that are required. So we'll log into our server here and then we'll go into the DNS manager and we will create the forward lookup zone that is required for Active Directory. Basically all this error is saying is that this PC has gone to the DNS server and asked where is my domain controller, and it's basically said it doesn't exist. So the computer will then give us an error and say I can't connect to this domain because I don't know where the server that gives me my information is. which is ironic really when you consider that it's the domain server itself that it's asked for. You can see logging into a server though, some of our group policies have applied because our desktop wallpaper has changed. So we want to go to Tools and then to DNS. And then first we're just going to try seeing if we can get netlog on the service. That should propagate the information in here to make it. So we're just going to open CMD as an administrator. And then we're going to try net stop netlog on, just to stop the service. And then net start netlog on. And potentially this will start propagating our DNS records as it starts. Ideally. And it still hasn't. So we want to go to forward lookup zones and make a new zone. Hit next, a primary zone. And then the zone name will be _ msdcs.bluedeer.local. And then we want to allow only secure updates. Finish. And then you'll see it's already starting to fill out. So here, domain controller, it's all been put in here already. And then just to make sure everything's been done properly, we're going to stop and start netlog on again. And then we're going to switch back to our PC. We press OK again, and this time it's asking me to log on, so I'm going to log on to bluedeer/administrator, and then put in my password. This account has authorization to add PCs to the domain. And there it says welcome to the bluedeer.local domain. Press OK and then give it a minute. It says we must restart our computer to apply changes, so we'll restart now, and once it launches back up it should be joined to the domain fully. And now as the computer boots on, it should give us an option for other user. And now when we log on, you can see we get this option, so I'm going to log on as the domain administrator account, just to test that the domain login is working. And then just running GP update/force on the server, because we notice that Office isn't installed. It's saying that one or more of them, it needs a server to restart, so we'll hit yes and it will restart our server. Going back to our PC, you'll see that it's logging in now, which means that domain login is working because I've just logged into the domain administrator account. Going back to the server, we'll just wait for it to reboot. Obviously some functionality will stop working on the PC connected to a server whilst it's rebooting, which is why in a professional production environment you would have more than one server with redundancy, with automatic switching, so that you could work on one server or one server could go down and services wouldn't fall with that. Going back to the PC, just bear with it, give it a few minutes once again, and it will hopefully set up correctly. You can see that our PC has launched. As of yet though, the desktop background hasn't changed, maybe the group policy hasn't applied. That can be fairly normal, especially given that the server is restarting. It might not have been able to pick that up in time before it went offline. Going back to the server, now it's rebooted, we'll just press Ctrl-Alt-Delete and log in. We can now go back to our PC and open the terminal. With the terminal running, we're just going to try GP update/force to download the GP updates from the server. and it tells us here that it can't get a proper connection to a domain server. That may be because it didn't automatically set up the... So it may be because obviously it didn't automatically set up the MSDS file before, and it may still be missing a few things. Let's just try connecting to the server first of all. And it pings, so that's okay. Then we'll use NSLookup to look up the domain, just to check DNS resolution is working, and we do get an IP address. Now we will see if it can find the domain controller, so we'll use NSLookup again, and we'll look for an SRV record. We'll do _LDAP._TCP.bluedeer.local. And there we go, this confirms that the SRV records aren't set up properly, so we're going to go back to our tools in DNS. Make sure that the MSDS folder is there. It is. And now we're going to open the command prompt again. As an administrator, remember, everything should be done with privilege escalation here. So run as administrator. And we're just going to do net stop, net logon, and then use and then net start, net logon. And this will automatically stop and then restart the service. Then we'll give it about 60 seconds and we'll force DNS registration by using the ipconfig/register DNS command. We're just going to give it a few seconds for netlogon to do what it needs to do. Just to make sure we don't have conflicting zones, we're going to delete this one and allow Active Directory to use this one here. So we're just going to restart netlogon. We're just going to manually try creating some TCP records. After demoting and re-promoting the Active Directory domain controller in the exact same way we did before, it's now propagated everything correctly, and we're just running a DC diag test on the DNS to make sure that it's passing. It is passing this time, now that all of our files are here in our DNS manager. The server's now passed that test, so we'll go over to our client PC and just run a few more tests to make sure that this can see the server properly. We'll just switch to command prompt. Then we'll do nltest/ds get domain controller bluedeer.local. And it completed successfully. That's what we needed to see. Now we need to just rejoin the domain. I'm just going to make the resolution change. So we'll go into settings. Now that we're in settings, we'll go to system again. Then we'll go to bottom to about. And now we'll go with domain or work group. And then we will attempt to rejoin the domain again. So bluedeer.local, hit OK. And it should prompt us for a login. It is, so we log in with the administrator account from the server again. And then it will say welcome to the bluedeer.local domain and ask us to restart the PC. So I'll go ahead and quickly restart that. Going back over to our server, if we just look in our users and computers directory, and then there you go, you can see here that computer has shown up. So it's registered successfully. As the PC starts now, it should take us back to a screen with an other user option so we can log into a domain account. And now our PC is loaded. I'll just log into one of the test accounts. And it's picked it up from the domain controller because we can see it's pulled the first and last name of the account. And now it's going to set up this domain account. So just bear with it and give it a few minutes to start. And you can see that it is processing our group policy because it has changed our desktop wallpaper. And now we're just going to wait for the taskbar to load. And this time when we do GP update /force, we can see the computer policy update is completed successfully. And it's just saying that this bit, which is our Office install, wasn't able to process because it must be done before system startup or user login. System will wait for group policy processing to finish completely before the next startup. This may result in a slow startup. That's absolutely fine, and we'll enter yes to restart. Typing yes will say restarting the computer, and then Windows will automatically restart. Give it a second. There we go, and it will say you're about to be signed out, and then perform its restart. As it's starting back up though, it will take an extra long time in order to install the software from our group policy. As the server's just rebooting, I didn't make it headless install, so it should prompt us to install Office when it boots up.